Welcome to the first episode of KDN, coming to you live from the phone bit. Introducing my host, Sarah Habib. I'm Eric Elias. We're going to talk about kids, the systems we create, and how they develop.
Yeah, today we're going to get to talk about AirTag Nation. I can't wait to talk about AirTag Nation.
Yeah.
What is AirTag Nation?
Do you know when Apple first launched the AirTag, it sold 55 million units that year? It's over $1 billion. There's probably now over 100 million AirTags out there. How many do you think are on kids?
I'm going to say half of that. And what's wild is that when Apple created the AirTag, the purpose, and it still is not the purpose, was never to tag children. Yet all these ancillary products have been made. There's these devices you can clip to a child's shoe, you can clip on a watch, all sorts of different things.
So what does it mean if all these parents are throwing AirTags onto their kids?
I think that's a great question. What does this actually do to kids over time? What kind of systems are we building around kids with this idea of tracking, whether it's an AirTag, sharing location, smart devices? We really want to understand what those trade offs are.
Yeah, I mean, I just think diving into kind of why are we doing this? How did this happen? It was kind of the combination of technology, the things we see on TV, the culture that we're creating, and we're almost getting away from helicopter parenting, but it's still very, very prevalent. Why is it so easy today to track your kids?
One, technology makes it so easy. AirTags made it so easy to track your kids. Find My location made it so easy to track your kids. But I want to step back 1 second and say what's something really special about our moment in time of parenting, lucky us, is that three things converge all at the same time, right? Smartphones, like the ability to track, and it's this wild moment in parenting where we also have every amount of information you want to have answered, you can. And we have all this technology to help us do that and to track us. So, with all of these things happening at the same time, of course, parents are left with hard choices as well as just the overburdening of information.
But does that make it easier to know when my kid's coming home? What did my kid go to school? Did they really go to Johnny or Joan's house?
I mean, yeah, it does, but at what cost, right? One, as a kid, I am sure I did it. I said to my parents I was going somewhere, went somewhere else. I spent outside all day. And what value did that add to me that we're losing for our kids today? And I guess I also just want to point out like, when I did that in 1990, was it safer than it is today? The data says no. The data says actually it's safer today. So why do we feel like
Yeah.
that it's not safer and that we should be tracking our kids? Like if a neighbor took me to the movies, like my mom wouldn't have tracked me. She wouldn't have had the ability. But today I feel like when we take other kids with us, sometimes you might see a tracking device on that child because parents are like, oh, I'm not with my kid. I'm not within eyesight of them. Let me put a tracking device on them so I can ensure their safety.
So is it a lack of trust in the world that we've been inundated with the stories of kids being kidnapped? I think that was one in Anxious Generation. They talked about how they did missing persons, and every night it was another story on a missing person. And so it created this reality, which is not a reality, but the perception that kids do get taken a lot and that kids are unsafe. But what message are we sending to kids then if we say we have to track them everywhere?
I think up until a certain age, a kid doesn't know they're being tracked. Whether that age is like 6, 7, 8, I think it's somewhere in there.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of more of a gray zone for parents. I think if your 5-year-old is going somewhere and it's in a really crowded space and you're unsure and you think it's going to add another layer of protection, okay. At what age do you need to be transparent with your kids that you're tracking them? At what age do they begin to understand what that even means, right? And I think depending on the kid, that somewhere falls between, say, 6 and 9, right?
Yeah, I'd argue though, some of the 5-year-olds, they're pretty smart. They can really pick up and they might start asking themselves, why am I being tracked? Why do I
Yeah.
need to be tracked?
Yeah. Do they know what being tracked means though? You
Right.
know what I'm saying? And like I think one of the things we know is that when we track kids, we limit their autonomy. They no longer feel as independent, and it almost feels like we're there to rescue them because we know where they are so we can help them. So
I
I
did read a story on that they said even putting a tracker and AirTag in the sports bag reduced the responsibility of the kid to know where their sports bag was because they just would use the phone to go find it within the house or the garage or the car. And it's like you're almost taking the responsibility away from just tracking their own this in that matter.
I mean, that's a great story to share. I like that. I also think it's important to remember, like, one, this is all coming from a place out of fear and anxiety. And how, as parents, can we manage our own fear and anxiety so that we don't need to track our kids unless we feel like it's really necessary for these extenuating circumstances? I know we're really supposed to be looking at the system and not taking a side. So that's hard for me, and I'm doing my best right now. I just wonder here at 3:30 in the morning yesterday, I woke up and I said to myself, I think I need to buy an Apple Watch to tag my kid. So, one, I know how to talk out of both sides out of my mouth. And two, that fear and anxiety came from we're sending her to a day camp in New York City. We don't live in New York City, and it's going to be a different experience for her. While she's been to the city many times, the idea of being away from us in a camp setting where they walk across the street to a public playground, it made me uneasy. But back in the day, people used to do this. So, where is that fear coming from? And why does putting like an Apple Watch on her, how is that going to solve my problem? Like,
Yeah.
does that lead
I
to a
mean,
distraction for her? Does it make her feel like she can reach out to us in the middle of the day, which she's not supposed to be doing? I have a lot of questions about why I was feeling this way.
right. And what's going to prevent her from calling us in the middle of the day? Is that going to just spark more urgency and more fear?
Yeah. I mean, our kid is somebody who has high attachment. She loves us. We love her. And it's hard for her sometimes to detach from us. So by giving her an Apple Watch where she potentially has the ability to connect with us, is that actually hurting her detachment from us in that moment when she gets dropped off at camp? Or giving her a crutch? I actually think it might, and it could be bad for her. So I don't know if I'm talking myself out of the Apple
No,
AirWatch
no,
right
that
now,
both
but
both of those things can be true. I think that's something
yeah,
we've learned as parents. Two things can be true.
yeah,
You can have lots of anxiety, want to track a kid based on that anxiety,
yeah,
and it could also be a crutch for them. It could also be something that they're too reliant on. That we're limiting her ability to grow independently from us, and that's going to hurt her when she's older. She's not going to have as much independence. She's not going to have as much confidence. And then it's like the unseen effect, and it doesn't happen all at once. I think that's the key. It's not like you put the
it's a
AirTag
system
on
shift, right?
once, right?
Yeah,
And then suddenly they lose their independence. But if they know they've been tracked for years upon years, it becomes part of their system. And we do know from anxiety studies, we do know from surveillance style studies that when people are surveilled and people are tracked, they change their behaviors. And so inadvertently, we're then forcing them or creating a system for them to not be themselves.
yeah. I think it's really important to like center around three things here. Historically, right? Kids built independence through uncertainty. They were outside, people didn't know where they were, parents didn't always know where they were, right? And the problem solving happened without adult oversight. By giving our child an
Right.
Apple Watch, we could solve a problem for her when normally she
Right.
might have to solve that by herself. So
And they might just call us because they got the watch. Know
100%.
they know
So,
where we
so
are.
so now we move to this world that is continuously aware of what's happening, who's where, what's happening.
Well,
So,
and then the impact of that is my parent can always find me.
yeah.
So not only does that reduce their independence, it also reduces any risks they might want to take.
Yeah.
And we know in business and in school and in risk taking is necessary. You
Yeah.
have to take risks. You can't stay into a safe zone, especially with how quickly the world is changing today.
Yeah. Totally agree. So, I think about what's the flip side of that, right? And that
Mhm.
really is a safety argument.
Right.
So if you have your child tracked or they have an Apple Watch, you have a faster response in emergency. It does give you peace of mind as a parent, support for young kids who might lose or misplace things, and it could definitely be useful in a really crowded environment. But like talk through that more. Like what does that mean for you?
Yeah, I just think that maybe when they have their phones, you don't think of it as tracking because the phone has other devices on it. I think it'd be useful if the Find My app would notify the other person that, hey, someone is tracking you, because that could reproduce a disincentive for the parent to constantly check it. I think one of the social media posts said, I hate being a CCTV parent where they're constantly tracking. They become addicted to tracking. I think it can be a useful tool of saying, are they still at practice or where are they? Are they coming home? I think that that's great if you're making dinner or something like that. But I do think the negative ramifications of tracking too early before the person's in a car or driving a vehicle may overtake the independence that we're taking away.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting to think about how whether an AirTag is extending the tracking or the on ramp to it.
Yeah.
Because if we're talking about young kids who don't
Slippery
have any
slope.
smart devices, AirTag would probably be the first experience with this. But if you're talking about like a middle high school child, adding an AirTag to like a car or some other device in addition to their phone is another layer of tracking, right?
Right. One, I want to just tackle the fundamentals of an AirTag. It's not meant for tracking, even though that's how we use it. It's not real time. It can be 6, 7, 8 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes behind. And it really just it gives a perceived notion of control. Just because I
False
know
sense of security.
false sense of security, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think that that may help, again, not taking a side yet. That may help some parents realize like it's not worth throwing an air tag. What happened at the what was the story about all the kids who went skiing? They all
Yeah.
put their
So there was a fifth grade trip, and a lot of parents put them, it was a school trip. It was during the school week, it was overnight. And the chaperones were like in this ski lodge, and all these kids walked in, and they got over 100 notifications of being like, an Apple AirTag is near you, an Apple AirTag is near you, because all of these fifth grade parents, which is 10 and 11-year olds, they were
going on a
tracked
school trip
going on a school trip
with school
with school
chaperones.
chaperones.
Yes.
They were being tracked. And that really does come from a place of fear and anxiety for parents.
No, and I guess from that, right? Not only are we not trusting the school then and not trusting the chaperones, I think it almost creates the fundamental belief that we can't trust, even on a ski slope. There's only 15 in this case. There's only 15 slopes. They're not going anywhere else. There's nothing out there in the middle of it. And it does. It calls to how well do we deal with our anxiety? How well do we deal with our sense of security? And then how much do we trust our systems? And I think even Jonathan Haidt talked about that. We've lost trust in our neighbors, our community, our systems, and so it's almost like it matters that what other parents do because if other parents exhibit trust, if you're the parent that says no, I'm not going to track, I trust the system, I trust the school, I trust the chaperones, other parents will see that. But if one parent sees that you've put an AirTag on, that's going to make me feel like, oh, am I supposed to be tracking? Am I supposed to also have that AirTag on? So I do think as parents, we can create that scene that we can.
100%. And I don't want to lose sight of what the kids experience, right? That so one, it's like this trust versus control for the parents, but as a kid, like you need the opportunity to be completely unobserved. You need the opportunity to make small mistakes. You need the room to experiment with independence, right? You need the opportunity to potentially lie to your parents about where you're going and then potentially be caught and have to have that conversation with your parents. That is a defining moment of like pre-adulthood that happens in high school. And if you don't have that interaction before you go off to college, I think it's a disservice, right? And tracking has made it so a lot of kids are missing out on those opportunities.
Well, and that was one of the papers that I had found published in 2025. Parental overprotection moderates the association between stressor exposure and anxiety during the transition to university. How do we say that more simply? It just said that what they found is that there's evidence for association between the parenting and folks or kids that are going into adulthood that overprotective behaviors exacerbate the effects of stress exposure. So, said even simpler, if we're being too protective of our kids, which I think tracking falls into that category, being too protective, that's going to hurt our kids and their ability to manage stress.
Yeah. So is there a balanced approach about this? Because to be honest, I feel like everything we've just said really leans us to be like, man, I don't know that we should track our kids. Is it a permanent situation? Is it temporary? Do you use it only in certain circumstances? How does your child know about it? Are you fully transparent that you're tracking? It's like, hey, you're going to this concert at this fest, and there's going to be a million people there. I'd really appreciate it if you could wear this, right? And if you get buy in from the child, does that make it different? Right? Is it used situationally or
Sure.
constantly? And how do you ensure that you're still building those independent skills and the opportunity to make mistakes, even if you are going to use it?
Yeah. So what are we gonna do? Are we gonna give her a watch that she keeps on her backpack, therefore she doesn't feel like she tracked the whole time, can call us at the end, or what are you leaning for so far?
I don't know. I'm really not sure. I don't know that I could even answer it now. I think a part of me wants to give her the Apple Watch so I feel peace of mind, and then a part of me doesn't want me to give it to her because I want her to feel brave, independent, and strong and that she can do anything. And so I'm not sure yet. And I think a lot of parents probably feel that way, right? I do think it's really situation dependent. Would I do it outside of that this year? Probably not. That might be the only case, but I really don't know.
Yeah, and even if we are, we still gotta have the same conversation, whether they're 5 or 15. How are we using the tool? How are we going to check it?
Yeah.
Does our kid trust us not to check it or to check it? And it's like, what's the risk? Because we always, every time you do a risk analysis, you try to go through the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario, while incredibly unlikely, is scary.
Yeah, of
And so
course. And
that,
and that fear
how do you overcome
perpetuates
that as a parent?
right. So
Yes.
much action. So, I think really when we're thinking about this, it's not really about AirTags. It's about what is this environment we're building for our kids? And how do we introduce technology, tracking, independence, and how do our kids see themselves in this system? So I don't really think like, is this good or bad, but what is this system encouraging over time? And are we okay with that?
Yeah, and I like the system framework if we square that off. If I'm putting if the input is I'm going to track you more, then the output will be the kid's behavior will change.
Yeah.
That we know for sure. And so the more tracking inputs we put into the system we're creating, the more they're going to feel controlled and inhibited, whether they realize it or not, whether we realize it or not. We're not going to know how their development would have changed otherwise. It's a counterfactual. It's too hard. All right, let's go through some rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, my 13-year-old found the AirTag and was furious. What do I do?
Repair, repair, repair.
My husband wants to track our 16-year-old. I think it's too much. We're fighting. Help us.
I think you have an honest conversation with the 16-year-old about whether or not it's needed and if only potentially in certain circumstances.
Got it. New York City subway, 11-year-old. They're going to school alone. AirTag feels like a non negotiable. Am I being crazy?
No, I think I might do it too.
Are you going to add pepper spray too? My teenager finally agreed to find mine, but I feel like I'm constantly checking it. Is that a problem?
Yes, definitely a problem. Try mindfulness.
My kid's 8, and I think about starting. What's the right way to introduce it?
Again, family conversation. What are the values and what are you looking to solve for?
Yeah. No, I like what you talked about regulation, and I think that's something that we'll hit on both in future episodes and a general theme in a system. How do we regulate? Tell me, what's a good way that you regulate?
So, mindfulness is the core of what I teach kids and educators and parents. And so, when we think about how this anxiety is the cause of the AirTag Nation, how can mindfulness for a parent actually help reduce some of this anxiety, right? Whether it's deep breathing techniques, any other sort of mindfulness activity, even coloring, right? What can you be doing on a regular basis to help manage your own anxiety as a parent? I think would go a long way in helping curb maybe some of the excessive use of AirTag Nation.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what we've done too, both within our parent group and the school, is have those conversations where we've made public spaces where people talk about it. They give both sides. They give their experiences, kids that are older and kids that are younger. And so that really has helped us too. Well, I think we really covered AirTags and tracking, and I definitely think that technology is such a huge topic. On our next episode, we're going to talk about if you've already given a device to your kid, what do you do with that? How do you implement parental controls? It's definitely something that parents deal with every day.
Yeah, awesome. I can't wait.
Thanks for joining KDN Network, the Kids Development Network, where we talk about systems and the systems we create to help our children grow and flourish and thrive in the world.